Hello and welcome to today's episode of Real Musicians Don't Starve. I'm your host, Michael Elsner, and today I'm here with a great friend of mine, Kris Bradley. And Kris has had a pretty phenomenal career. I can't wait for you to learn more about her and how she's gotten to where she's at. But a little quick backstory on Kris. She's been able to tour the world as a singer for a Led Zeppelin cover band, which I think is just awesome. She transitioned from just being a singer-songwriter who was really at the mercy of other producers and engineers to be able to record her music. She transitioned from that to becoming a very successful producer in her own right. She jumped into the game and started learning how to record and produce using a program called Logic. Started producing a lot of other artists. She's of course been producing her own music. Her music has appeared. She's done music for Warner Chappell production music, or Warner Chappell PM. She's done music for Sony, Fox, Miramax. We have a little common background with Miramax. Let's see, what was the other thing I had for you? Oh yeah, my favorite. She's been doing a lot of TV and film placements, and she recently had a national commercial with Lincoln, and she can talk more about her placements and stuff like that. But Kris has been absolutely fantastic, or she's absolutely fantastic with what she does, and she's been able to take the process of producing, and actually really her experience of learning the production world, jumping in as a singer-songwriter who didn't really know much about gear and the techno babble of recording, and become a very successful producer, but then in turn take that and start teaching other singer-songwriters how to also take control of their own career and produce their own music, which is so important nowadays anyway, because producing your own music, especially producing quality music or professional quality music out of your own home is more possible than ever before, with just a couple pieces of gear, starting with a computer and then a program. Really within that, just with those two pieces of gear, you have everything you need to produce professional quality tracks. In fact, a lot of the music that you hear on TV and on the radio and whatnot is really, a lot of it's just produced on laptops using programs like Logic and Pro Tools these days. So it's very simple to do that now. And there's a lot of technical aspects that you have to learn, but Kris has really narrowed that down and been able to fine tune that into a program that she has through her company called Produce Like a Boss. So Kris, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Yay, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome. I just want to jump right in. You've been able to, going from touring as a lead singer of a rock band, touring the world with that, to producing and engineering music. That's a pretty, drastic change,
Yeah.
stylist, So my question to you is how have you been able to, what are some strategies that you've been able to use throughout your career to, continue to really evolve and be able to provide value to those people that you work with, whether it's a songwriter or whether it's a producer or a music supervisor on a commercial or on a TV show, or just producing music that you're getting out through Warner Chappell PM and whatnot.
So I think the key word there is evolve, right? It's like I like to call myself a student of life. I am a lifetime student and a student of life, and I am always trying to grow and expand and not only keep up with the times, but see how I can provide value to the other person that I'm working with. So, if that's working with students, it's like, how can I make sure that I'm up to date with what's modern and what's trending and, whatever, make sure that I'm serving in that way. If I'm serving a client, kind of like the same thing, like, depending on the level of production they need, how versed am I, how much have I learned in that area? It really just, I apply that to everything that I'm doing, as a touring and gigging musician that wanted to start doing session work, I realized, wow, I could be of more value if I learned how to record myself. Like, how can I step my game up? How can I educate myself? I love to read books all day.
Yeah.
And I love to just learn how I can grow and improve my craft and also remain completely relevant at all times. Like, I know exactly what's going on in the industry, hopefully.
Well, yeah, you hit on a perfect element right there. Actually knowing what's going on within the industry. But even on top of that, you talked about books. I love reading books. But reading books specifically on, well, in this case, we'll just say music industry stuff like business, the actual, how does publishing work? How does, what are the principles behind, publishing and copyright and whatnot? When you understand that, then you know how to actually make the business work for you. And it's been my experience that a lot of musicians focus so much just on their skill set, on their craft, but they never actually learn how the business works, and they never learn how to actually let the business work for them.
Right. I mean, I was that artist for a really long time, and I look back and I kind of shake my head, but I know everything happens for a reason, and I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't, but I turned a blind eye to it because I thought that it was just enough to be really good at your talent. And I thought, I'll keep my head down, I'll work on my craft and my skill, and that's going to be enough. But I've come to realize that marketing and sales and knowing business, is just as important. And I'm going to go one step further and say, or more important than the actual product or the skill or whatever it is, whether you're an artist or whether you have a product, because if nobody freaking knows about what you're doing, it doesn't matter how good it is. It's kind of like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, right? And I think that, so many artists would be that would help them so much if they could actually really wrap their minds around that, because the two go hand in hand, right? You're an artist, you're an independent artist, you are an entrepreneur. You have to learn business, right?
Yeah, 100%. I love that you say that. There's so many artists out there. There's so many artists out there that are creating content really every day. Especially, now, as and we all know that, so many people can record from the comfort of their own home really, easily and quickly. So that just means that there's more and more product out there. In fact, I know one of the recent stats is that there's over 40,000 songs uploaded to Spotify on average every day. That's an astronomical amount of music every single day. Now there are over 50 million songs on streaming services.
Wow.
Last year or a year and a half ago, it was 35 million. So that's a lot of new product that's been created. But exactly what you said, there's you have to be able to market yourself so that people actually know that you exist, so that people actually want to buy and consume your product. So that's so key. So I want to just go in a slightly different direction. It's fair to say that you've had a very successful career. I've known you for a while, and and anyone who can create music full time, who can wake up and go into their studio wearing their pajama pants, I think is pretty successful, right? But everyone has their own definition of what success is. And I really think that being a successful musician starts with your definition of success and how you define your success. If your definition of success is, well, I'm only going to be successful, if I'm on the cover of Rolling Stone and I'm playing Saturday Night Live, next year, then that you're missing out on a lot along the way, right? So my question, and I like to ask this to everyone, is what is your definition of success, and what does that look like to you?
Oh man, well, it keeps changing. So it's kind of like a loaded question, but I'm just going to run with it as much as I can. Like for me, it was like, I never really was like, oh, I want to be like a famous artist. Limelight was never a thing for me. So for a while I focused on like, oh, I want to be, a professional songwriter. Okay, well, what does that mean? Oh, that must mean that I want to get a publishing deal. So I'll move to Nashville. So I moved to Nashville and, faced a lot of rejection, and didn't get that publishing deal. But then as I worked harder and harder to build a business for myself, I found that the people I was reaching out to for opportunities have now actually become partners. And I've actually created more opportunities for myself as an independent songwriter that does get paid, by the way, to write songs, and also I get to keep the rights and I don't owe any money. So it's like, if you would have asked me what my definition of success was, I would have said a major label pub deal, right? But I didn't get that. And now I'm making more money than most people I know with my songwriting that have publishing deals. They're going, shit, how do I do what you do? You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, so it just keeps changing. And now, now I'm moved into the business of helping others to grow, and their success becomes my success and my excitement. So right now, the definition of success for me is watching other singers and songwriters grow their craft and learn how to become self-sufficient and learn how to produce their own music and get paid to write songs, basically helping them to achieve what I achieved by teaching that has now become my definition of success, is their definition of, or is their success, you know?
Yeah.
And I imagine that it will continue to grow as I grow, you know? So.
You know, I think a lot of that, I love that. I resonate with that so much because a lot of that is my same path too. Yeah, I moved to Nashville years ago in the late 90s, and I was here till from 98 to 2003. And I got turned down by every publisher, you know, and went through the whole, you know, rejection thing too. And then I moved out to California and learned about, you know, the licensing world. And that's where I had success. It's funny because, you know, the songs that I got turned down by the major publishers ended up becoming very successful when it came to licensing. Funny how that works, right? But at the same point, I love how you say how it changes. The definition of success changes. I feel like that's really accurate. You know, I've seen that with a lot of my friends and a lot of people that I've interviewed. Their definition of success constantly changes. And I think a lot of it actually comes down to, you have this fantasy of what the music industry could be. It's not accurate, but it's a fantasy. Like, okay, if I get a publishing deal, then my life is going to be wonderful. I'm going to be able to write songs every day. I'm going to have, you know, good money coming in. I'm going to live a comfortable life, etc. Right? And then you get into it and you realize that there's a whole other reality that is not that fantasy.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so then, of course, the definition of success changes. Or you see other people who are living that lifestyle and you go, ooh, I don't want that at all.
Right.
I think a lot of that even comes back down to what we were talking about earlier. It comes back down to knowing and understanding the business, you know, and going, oh, yeah, you know what? Maybe having a publishing deal with a publisher who's going to lock up my songs in perpetuity, and the only success that they're going to have is by that one publisher working that song for the rest of my life. No, that's probably not a good idea anymore.
Right. Right. And then that goes back to the growth and the learning. It's just like, you know, that's my definition of success. Am I constantly growing and learning? And if I do face something that, like, let's call it a failure, although I don't call it a failure, I just see it as an opportunity to reposition and to pivot. Right. So it's like, if I can do that in every moment when things don't pan out the way that I had planned, I am succeeding. And it's so funny, you know, my great grandma my great grandma raised me for the first 8 years of my life, right? Her, you know, I call her Moz, and she is actually still alive. She's like 93. And I love her, but bless her heart. Every time I talk to her, she's like, when are you going to be on American Idol? When are you going to be on Dancing with the Stars? Now that's her definition of success for me. And most people in the world, that's what they see. They're like, you're Beyonce big or you're broke. And it's like, oh, it might be too late for my Grams to realize that there's so much in between, but not for anybody else, not for independent artists. It's like, you know, you can still have this like lofty fantasy of like, I want to go for, you know, this major thing, but like in the middle, there's so many ways to create all these, you know, alternate streams of revenue, income streams, right?
Yeah.
And it's not Beyonce big or broke.
You are 100% right. Yeah, that's why, you know, that's why I created Real Musicians Don't Starve, because, you know, when I first moved out to California, you know, that was really when my real education began. Okay, I kind of look at like my years in Nashville in their, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. That was my college education, right?
Right.
But that was just, you know, when you're in college, you're broke and, you know, figuring things out. And then I got into the real world, and then I really started learning. And we know, you know, you go to college, you get your little education, but when you actually get into the job market, that's when you really start, you know, learning and thriving, right? And, you know, when I got to California, I started working with so many people. I'd go to their houses and I would just be blown away, because I thought at one point that's what it was. You're either Beyonce big or you're broke. And I love that phrase, right? But then I'd go to these guys, like their compounds. They weren't even houses. I mean, they were just these massive compounds. And I would learn all of these people were the guys who worked behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. They wrote a lot of songs. They did a lot of productions. They were the guys whose names you read in the credits, but you never saw them in the magazines. And then I was fortunate that I became friends with a lot of, you know, quite a number of actually successful artists, people that I was a fan of, people who I owned their records. And I would go to their house and they would have these nice, you know, 3 or 4 bedroom houses in the valley. And as a California person as yourself, those that's nice. That's a great living. But then you go to these compounds like up in the hills or out in Malibu or in the Palisades, and you're like, this is incredible. But these were the people who were always working behind the scenes. And that's when I realized, wow, there's an abundance of opportunity to work behind the scenes, whether that's playing guitar or whether I'm a guitar player. So whether that's playing, guitar on other people's projects as a session musician, staying busy, doing that, composing for shows, writing for different artists. And one of the benefits of being behind the scenes is that you have this opportunity to be so diverse,
yes,
stylistically. And as someone who played in bands for a long time and went after the record deal and for many years, when you're in that situation, you don't have the opportunity to be diverse. You have to do one particular style that you're branding a certain way, and then you're just promoting that for the next year to try and get enough fans, to get enough traction so that you can then start approaching a record label.
Well, that's what really drew me to producing was that I never wanted to choose a style. I didn't want to fit myself into a box. And yes, I'm a singer. Yeah. Yes, I like to perform. And, yes, I'd rather be in the studio than on the road. But besides that, I just I never wanted to fit myself into that, as an artist, I think you're kind of forced into that. Pick a lane. Who could you open for? Who do you sound like? But as a producer, as a session musician, like you're saying, we get to be so much more diverse. And I think that's so much more fun, honestly.
Yeah, it gives, I love that. That is one thing. I know, people think of, I talk a lot about the music that I like. So people think that I'm, this rock guitar player, which I totally am. But, people will be surprised when they hear a lot of the other projects that I've played on that have been R&B and funk. And I spent a long time, learning how to play that style of music. It's a completely different style of music, but I love it, Yeah. But when I show up, people aren't going to think that immediately. That's one of the nice things being a session player is that, I've played fingerstyle acoustic guitar on huge films. I've played funk guitar on huge films. I've played mandolin and banjo on huge films. But people would never automatically hire me, to play in their band as a banjo player. I don't look like a banjo player. And that was one of the things that I loved about being behind the scenes and doing all the other stuff, all the TV stuff, was that it didn't matter. All the other stuff, all those other political things, those things that happen in the music industry pursuit, how you look, what kind of clothes you're wearing, are you wearing the latest styles, that kind of stuff. All that stuff falls away. How old you are. It's hard to get a gig playing for a big pop star if you're 45 years old, because they're looking for the young 25-year-olds to be out on stage with them, really just for the image, right? But the funny thing is, it's the 45-year-olds who are playing on the records. Right. So, and it's the 45-year-olds who are playing on that number one song, and then the number one song following that, and then the number one song following that. So, yeah, there's a lot more opportunity as a musician than just being on the cover of a magazine or on top of the charts in radio. But you talked earlier about rejection. And that's commonplace. There's no way you're gonna, have a career in the music industry without rejection. It's just gonna come. And you were talking about pivoting and whatnot. So, what are some strategies that you implement during the times that you face rejection, or maybe even during down times where things aren't as busy as you would like?
Yeah, the word that comes to mind is just innovate. It's like, how can I get creative here? I'll give you an example. I work on some online platforms, but this is when really things started taking off for me. I learned how to record myself, and I found websites like airgigs.com and soundbetter.com. And then I got in with Soundbetter like right at the perfect time. And, I got on as a premium provider, and all of a sudden all this work was coming in. I mean, I was doing several top lines a week. I was doing almost like 2 sessions by myself. So I'm not paying anyone studio fees, and I'm keeping all the money. And I'm like, this is great. And I had a huge spike in my income. I was just singing in pajama pants from my home studio, super happy. Right. But then all of a sudden they must have let in a new batch of singers or something, because all of a sudden it just dropped off. And all my reviews were amazing. All my reviews were 5 stars. It wasn't anything I had done wrong. But when the market changes, it changes, right? So my first thought was, oh gosh, no, but I thought about it and I was like, okay, I did this before without them. Yes. And it also taught me, okay, where's the lesson to learn here? The lesson is never rely on anything outside of yourself. Always have more than one plate spinning at a time, which is what has caused me to become the jack of all trades that I am, because I'm never screwed when something doesn't go right anymore. So when, and then Soundbetter did end up picking back up. But when I had those dry spells, I was like, okay, what can I do different? Who do I know? So I started reaching, I'm like, okay, I know these I know this publisher in Nashville. I wonder if they need any demos. I wonder if I could offer a special service for their writers only, and just started innovating and pivoting and going, okay, how can I change this up, And then it's funny because little did I know when I was creating my first tutorial videos on teaching artists how to produce themselves, that would soon become a business as well.
Yeah.
That was another thing. I was like, well, I'm gonna teach this thing, and then it's like, oh, someone's like, oh, you should turn that into a course. Well, okay, pivot.
Yeah.
Pivot.
Yep. Yep.
So
I know that one well. as we both know, Kris and I actually have the same mentor when it comes to putting our teachings online, and that's initially how we met. So a lot of our story is very similar in that, I'll just show some people how to do this, and we met this person, or there was this person who was in our songwriting community, a guy named Bill O'Hanlon, who shared with both of us, you should, this is how you actually, put that up online. And he actually, showed us how to do the entire process. It showed me about maybe a year and a half before I guess he started showing Kris. But we have the same mentor who's been tremendously life-changing for both of us by far. Hey everyone, I just want to hit pause for a second on this podcast since we're talking about something life-changing here, and I want to invite you to my special workshop called Real Musicians Don't Starve. Now, this is an entirely free workshop, and in it, we're going to focus on the 3 keys to your success. You're going to learn an extremely powerful strategy that allows you to create your own wow factor. And this wow factor allows you to attract opportunities to both you and your music, as well as remove any financial worry that you may have pursuing a career as a full-time musician. Now, you can check out this workshop for free at realmusiciansdon'tstarve.com/workshop. Now let's jump back into the episode with Kris. So I have when we talk about being a successful musician, and I think, what we share here is it comes back down to musicians, but the reality is these are strategies and mindsets that they're success strategies and success mindsets that work in any industry. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, so much of it comes down to the mindset, having a positive mindset. So much of it comes down to, obviously, the skill set that you develop and pivot, and you got to learn some other skill sets, along the way and whatnot. Right. And then you have to take action. And so you were talking just a minute or two ago about how, you would reach out to some of these publishers and you would ask them, right? Mm-hmm. And what I love about that is that's taking some pretty bold action. And I know in my experiences with other musicians over the years, many of them are afraid. It's really fear. They're afraid to reach out to people at bigger companies, say like a publisher or a record label. Mm-hmm. One thing I've learned through all my conversations with successful people is that fear it's very, very real. We all have that fear in a sense, although I think fear is a very strong word. How do you go about that? When it comes time to reaching out to someone or actually taking action, what is a mindset that you have about, well, I'm just going to reach out to these people and see what they want? A lot of people wouldn't do that. A lot of people would be afraid of the rejection that might come from them reaching out to these people from the beginning. So what is the inner dialogue you have with yourself that allows you to actually just, take the jump forward and take purposeful action and actually contact specific people?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all boils down to this, and this applies to reaching out to a publisher or a library or a supervisor or anybody. It's like, how can I be of service? I wasn't calling to ask them for a favor. I provide a service and I'm really good at what I do. And if they might not have something like that for, for the cost and the value, I look at it as I'm offering them a service. I'm saying, hey, I've got this thing that would actually really work for you. If this was a supervisor, a library or supervisor, I might go, hey, I've studied online. I've checked out your website and I love the music that you're placing. I noticed that you're a little light in the urban pop area. I've got some great stuff. I would show how I'm showing up in service instead of, hi, I know you don't know me, but can I have something? That is not my approach ever. Nobody in this industry owes you anything. They don't owe you their time. They don't owe you their business. They don't owe you their resources. And the second I learned that, I started moving forward a lot quicker. Right? I stopped expecting anything from anybody and started showing up going, how can I serve you?
Yeah. I love that. That's the foundation, I think, for anyone who's successful in any industry. You are a service to someone. You're always serving someone. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're working at Starbucks, you're serving your customers. Right? If you're a musician and you're getting up on stage, if you're Justin Timberlake and you're playing an arena, full of people, you're serving those people who paid the good money to come see you perform. As musicians, when we're writing music, we are serving our audience, and we have to figure out how we're serving them. What is the experience we're giving them? And when and you're very clear about the service that you can bring someone and the value that you can provide, that just automatically creates confidence in how you approach people.
Yeah. And you know what? I'll tell you, when I used to have the fear doesn't go away. It diminishes the more confident you are that you are showing up in service. I will say that. But like when I used to get if I was feeling really nervous and unworthy of the opportunity, it's usually because I was knocking on a door that I shouldn't have been knocking on. And I think my conscience knew it and was like, no. And that was that anxiety. So sometimes the fear is like, no, you got to face it and do it anyways. But sometimes it's your inner wisdom saying like, do you actually have, like, for example, I know people that have been like, oh, I just want a publishing deal. I'm like, do you know what that is? Do you know what it means? If someone were to sit down and go, I'm going to offer this to you right now, do you actually understand? Well, they're like, well, no. I'm like, how many songs have you written? Well, like 2, Am I knocking on a door that I'm prepared to accept the opportunity should it come to me? Yeah. Like, what if you do all this work to get a supervisor on the phone or on an email and you get them to respond and they're like, great, send me your catalog. And you're like, well, I've written 3 songs and they're all about my cat and, or whatever, and it's just, you miss the mark completely. It's like, well, now you've blown that opportunity. Maybe your focus should have been on working on your craft or, whatever it was, so that by the time you've knocked on that door, the opportunity, should it present itself, you'd be prepared to accept it.
You have a phrase that you've said a number of times that I love, and it's, you got to build before you knock.
Yeah. Got to build before you knock.
I love that phrase. I say that all the time now because it's so true. And you stated it perfectly, and I like to think of it like this, people don't mind other people knocking on the door, right? Everyone's looking for opportunities. Everyone in the industry is, they're looking for other people to work with. It's just the reality. They're always looking for new music. They're always looking for, new artists who can bring a lot of value to the table. But think of it like this. You're at a dinner party, or no, not a dinner party. You're at a Super Bowl party, okay? Let's say you're hosting a Super Bowl party, right? You got all your friends over and someone knocks on the door. You open it up. You don't know who it is, but it's just someone going, oh, I was driving down the street and I saw there were a lot of cars out front. And I just thought I would, come in and see, it looks like you guys are having a really good time. I'd like to come in. Well, if you're hosting this party at your house, you turn that person away, right? It's insane. Excuse me. I'm for whatever reason, my throat's getting dry. I think it's the allergies in Nashville in right now. But if you're at that dinner party or that Super Bowl party and someone opens up the door or someone knocks on the door and you open it up and it's your neighbor who you don't know, but it's your neighbor and they have a big platter full of, cheese, and maybe they even made some like wings and stuff like that. And I mean, they're showing up with a big platter full of food and they're the new guy, what are you going to do? You're going to be like, hey, everybody, look at the new guy. Look what the new guy brought. This is awesome. And they're going to invite you in and everyone's going to be like, the new guy, you know? And suddenly, you know, you're going to make friends with a lot of people because you brought an extraordinary amount of value to the table, even though you're the new guy.
Right.
Absolutely. And so you want to build before you knock. You want to put that platter together, right?
Show up some wings and some cheese.
Exactly. And when you do that, again, who's going to turn you down? It would be really weird for people to turn you down if you showed up at the party with all that stuff, because you're bringing them what they want.
Right.
Right. And that's the way that I look at reaching out to people. If you can show up with value, you know, the doors will open. But if the doors close, it's because you probably aren't providing value in a strong enough way, or you're making it too much about you and not about serving them. But you have another phrase, another story that I love, and it is, you know, there's that phrase, you know, jack of all trades, master of none, and you said jack of all trades earlier, but there's actually more to that story, and I'd love for you to share that.
So I recently discovered that the quote, "a jack of all trades is a master of none," is actually incomplete. The entire quote reads, "a jack of all trades is a master of none, but still always better than a master of one." And I don't even remember what I was listening to when I heard that, but it blew my mind. It was so cool because it was actually meant to be a compliment to the human Swiss Army knife, which is what I call the jack of all trades.
Well, that's kind of what we have to become nowadays. Also, pursuing, you know, a career in music. You know, you can't just do the one thing. There are many different roles you have to play. You're
100%.
Playing the artist,
You're playing the artist and the label, right? And it's like, and until, you know, if you choose to go the label route, and until you have that team of a manager and a booking agent and somebody doing your marketing and social media, and then the label to put you in the studio, you are all those things. So how can you really take it into your own hands, you know? Yeah. Which is exactly what you have to do to be successful as an independent artist until you can start outsourcing those things.
I don't know one successful musician throughout my career who doesn't know how to handle every aspect of their business.
Right. And then I have some people that are like, well, I don't really want to know that because, you know, I'm just going to get somebody else to do it. And I'm like, great, but learn it at least, even if you've got the resources and the money to hire out that team. Do you really want to be the person that's like, I mean, that's how people get ripped off. I mean, that's how people, you know, is like not knowing your business. I would rather know how everything works on enough level to be able to manage my team than to be like, well, I'm just going to trust this person. No, you take, nobody cares about your business as much as you do. Yep. Learn enough so that you can at least be the conductor of your orchestra, you know?
Oh, I love it. I love that. Yes. Conduct the orchestra. Yeah. You have other people doing the role, but you can look back. You are the CEO of your business.
100%.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you. It's kind of a two-part question.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up, and I'd love for you to talk about Produce Like a Boss. But if you could go back in time to, we'll say, you know, I just always randomly throw out 20 years old, but we'll say, you know, in your early 20s, 20-year-old Kris, if you could go sit across from 20-year-old Kris at a diner somewhere and have a conversation, what are two things that you would tell yourself at 20 years old that you would do differently, or that would save you years of struggle and hardship?
20-year-old me was such a dumbass, though. There's so much I would say to 20-year-old me. One of which
it could be 22-year-old you.
That was still pretty bad. One of the things I would say is nobody's coming to save you. And what I would mean by that is, you know, there's no label. No one's going to come save you just because you can sing, because that's exactly what I was. I was a singer and I was cute and I was running around like, you know, singing in rock bands and like, just like, no clue what I thought literally that somebody was going to discover me and do all the things and that I would just kind of be like, you know, the artist that signs the deal. So I would say to myself, nobody's going to come save you. And I got one more.
Yeah.
That would help with my career, or
that would. Yeah, I mean, whatever. Yeah, that you would advise yourself to do differently. We'll use that as a whole.
Okay. I would have said, no one's coming to save you. And I would have said, start learning how to record yourself now. Because I didn't actually start until my very early 30s, late 20s, learning how to record. And it's something that I actually dabbled in as a teenager when Acid DJ came out and loved it. And I took to it really quick, and then I never stuck with it because I just, just didn't, which was so dumb. So I would say, and remember that thing you did when you were 14 that you were really good at with the first, and you took to it, pick that back up. Yep.
That's awesome. It's so funny you mentioned Acid. I used to, before I got into Pro Tools, I did all my production on Acid on a PC. And for those who don't know, Acid is actually a recording program from a long time ago.
Ones, right?
Yeah. It has nothing to do with the drug.
Yeah, right?
But yeah, I did all my old productions prior to from 1998 or 99 all the way to 2002 using, I think it was Sony. I think Sony made it. It was called Sony Acid. And it was a great program, especially at the time. Now we take it all for granted, but at the time you could grab these, what they were called acidized files. You could pull them into the program, and it would automatically, like these would be like drum loops and stuff like that. It would automatically stretch the file to the tempo of the song, right? So you could use these done loops at any tempo. You just bring in the acidized file, and it would stretch it. Now, programs do it now without thinking about it, and it's not a big deal. But at that time, oh my gosh, that just opened up a whole new world of opportunity producing and writing. So now you could buy these loop libraries that had acidized files, and you could use all these drum loops that you could just create music all at different tempos, and then lay down your guitars and bass and drums and your keyboards and stuff like that and whatnot. And that was a fun program.
I just had so much going on, like so much distraction. I was kind of a bad kid. And like, I've been on my own since I was 15. So around the time that I learned it in that brief moment, I was also, on my own at 15, and not living in the house anymore. So obviously that wasn't the time to stick with it. But I would, if I could go back to my 22 or my 20-year-old self, I'd be like, remember that thing that you started dabbling in that was super, go back to that, because I missed that 10, like almost like 10 years, in between when I picked it back up again. And so I'd be that much better at experience right now if I did.
That's well, hey, you're where you're at now, and you're there for a reason. And now you're helping a lot of other people, a lot of other songwriters learn how to record. And you're taking the techno babble out of it, and you're simplifying it, which I think is fantastic. And I'd love for you to talk about Produce Like a Boss.
Yeah, sure. So we've kind of been talking about it already, but basically, when I was learning how to produce, I could not find anything in layman's terms that made any sense to me. And I had a couple friends that were producers, but they kept speaking in, what I call technobabble, where they were just using so many $5 words that it's like, I can't start reading from point D if I don't know what A, B, and C is. So I kept looking for that. What is the step-by-step process? Like, what is it actually? What is production? What is arrangement? And all this stuff that I was looking for, I never really found. So I kept stumbling through my, through trial and error and, learning how to record myself. And I guess it kind of caused me to come up with these systems to put in place to help keep me on track and help keep me inspired and help my workflow and keep me organized. And I finally put together that thing I always wanted, which was a step-by-step program on how to produce your song from beginning to end. Another thing that used to really drive me crazy was all the producer lingo that I didn't understand. Once again, I would go to look for resources. Man, what does it mean when they say, I'm going to comp that, or I'm going to punch in, or what's an overdub? And, yes, I could look up those things individually, but I'm like, gosh, I'd love this all on one sheet somewhere that I could just, quickly reference it. Not because I want to be an audio engineer. I don't really want to get into this, like the crazy details of example of like, sample rates and all these other things, but like just basic studio everyday language. So then I created the quick guide to producer's lingo, and so that goes hand in hand with my course, which is called From Voice Memo to Demo, where I literally take a song that, as songwriters, we all get our ideas down on our phones. And I've got it recorded on my phone, not played to a click or anything, just a regular work tape you would get in the room after a songwriting session, and I pull it into the session. And then the course is actually me walking you through my entire process as a producer of what I would do to, go through the pre-production process, which is kind of like what I call kind of like building out a roadmap, if you will. An architect designs a blueprint, and then the building gets, you don't just show up and like, all right, guys, let's build this house. You know, there's usually a game plan in place. So that's exactly what my course is like, how do we game plan this out and create some ultimate structure so that you're not ever having to deal with blank page syndrome. And then all the instruments that I use, everything, there's an explanation for it. I've created a sheet. It's like, okay, here's the plugin I used and here's why I used it. So if I bring in bells on the second verse, it's like, okay, that's great. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to tell you where to find it. But if you're wondering why I did that, here's a sheet where I say, okay, so I brought this here as a counter melody to the lead vocal to add lift to the second verse and so on and so forth. So there's an explanation. It's not just like, do this because I said so. So it's this really in-depth, like, step-by-step program in which I take you from a voice memo to a demo. And by the end, you have a fully produced song. Now you can choose to follow along with everything I'm doing. And I even provide my stems, which are the individual audio tracks of each instrument. Or you can do your own song and just apply the same principles and strategies that I'm doing. So, you might walk away with it going, okay, I'm going to produce the same thing you just did, which is great practice. I like to learn like that. I'll watch someone and I'll recreate the same track they're doing to help get the tools built, then turn around and do my own demo. Well, a lot of people, they did that, but a lot of people are like, I just followed along with what you did, but I did my own work tape and my own demo.
Yeah.
So it's been incredible. It hasn't even been a year. I have over 170 students. And it's just so great to hear what they're getting out of it. I'm getting such great feedback.
Yeah. The other thing I love about it with the feedback that you're getting is you have people who have gone through that, and while they may not be producing their own songs, they've learned how to record themselves. And now they're actually recording themselves and for other people.
Yeah, well, and that's the other side of it too, is like when I started learning how to record, I knew it was going to be a hot minute before I could be a professional producer. There's a reason it takes a while to build, your craft and your skill at anything. But it's like, once again, innovate. Like, what am I already good at? Like, what can I pull away from this? And it's like, oh, I'm already singing and songwriting. And that is a skill I've been working on for a long time. So that's how I started doing session work right away. And then I was building my chops as a producer in the meanwhile. And I found that just by sharing that experience, it's kind of like a lot of my students are doing the same thing. They're like, holy crap, I am new to producing, but I've been playing guitar for 15 years. I'm going to learn how to capture that performance and then find the market of people that are looking for guitar players, because we're all working remotely, even without the shutdown and everything. Remote collaboration has been hugely popular for a while now.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
But even more so now out of necessity, because we don't have the options to be in the same room. So, I've got singers that have joined the program that are now making money and they haven't even finished the program. I just had an interview with Erin the other day. She's almost done with the program, but she's already making money as a session singer. She just got hired to do her first voiceover Audible book.
Wow, that's awesome.
It's all stuff she learned in the course, which is so cool because I knew when I was making the course that it was going to be really helpful to teach someone how to make a demo, but I didn't actually ahead of time figure out like how many little individual things you get from it as well. One of the bonuses in my course is actually called How to Hire Outside Musicians. So a lot of people will say, well, I'm just not really good at guitar, but my songs are guitar driven. No problem. Being a producer does not necessarily mean that you have to be Quincy Jones. You don't have to be good at yes, there are multi-instrumentalist producers out there, but there are producers that don't play instruments. So how involved you want to be instrumentally is totally up to you as a producer. I will teach you how to hire outside guys that are doing session work, guys like me, that are like, that'll come in and they'll actually fly you the files so that you can just pull them into your session.
Yeah. Well, that's so important now too, with no matter what you're doing. If you're a drummer, if you're a bass player and whatnot, being able to record out of your home, and remotely, pre-COVID, post-COVID, the whole deal. I've been living in Nashville for a long time, but a great story of this is actually there was a mini series on Discovery Channel a couple of years ago called Harley and the Davidsons. It was a 3-part mini series. Basically, it was 3 movies that detailed the whole history of Harley Davidson from the beginning all the way up to when they came out with the Knucklehead. Which I think was like the 1940s or something like that. It's a fascinating, documentary, but not a documentary, but like movie. And I did, the composer who wrote that music lived in Seattle. I did all the guitars for episodes, or for parts 1 and 3 at my studio here in Nashville. I did all the guitars for part 2, both acoustic and electric guitar and bass, while I was touring China for a month.
Right.
Each one took about a month to do, right? But I was working remotely the entire time. I not once saw or was in the same room as the composer, the orchestrator, the mixer, nothing. And that just goes to show. And at one point I was on the other side of the country, other side of the world, and that just goes to show how important it is to be able to record yourself. And at that point, that literally was just a laptop. I had Pro Tools and I had an interface. That's all you need to get started. And I love how your program, you discuss, you hang with the necessities, because that's all you need. I think a lot of other people who talk about recording stuff tend to get a little too detailed when it gets to gear. And one of the things I love about your program, and why it resonates with me and why I love to share it with people, is that I come from the background of being a songwriter first, which is very much the right-brained mentality, right? That's the art. And then we have the business. In order to be successful, you have to have the left brain, which is, the more analytical side, right? So that's the business. But I feel that people who are engineers tend to be more left brain, tend to be more analytical. Mm-hmm. And I don't like to live in that world. So I like to live in the creative world, the right brain. And I like to put little systems in place that allow you to do all the other stuff, the left brain stuff, the business stuff, the recording stuff, very easily and quickly, without having to worry about noise floor and signal to noise ratio and all this other stuff that really means nothing when you listen to a song. Mm-hmm. And I love that your program is basically, starts with a microphone or a source, a guitar, keyboard, whatever it is. You go through your little interface into your system, and you can use everything in the system beyond that.
It is all plug and play,
Yeah. I love that.
And here's the thing, as far as like the gear, I think that a lot of people use gear, or lack of having gear, as a reason not to start. And it's not that I'm like anti-gear. I kind of joke like I'm the anti-gear, because I am about just starting. I'm not anti-gear, and a lot of the gear that I suggest people get, I have nicer gear than that now, but what I started with and what I have now is totally different. And I didn't let anything stop me. So it's like, I one of my favorite sayings is, oh gosh, what is my procrastination? Can I remember it? Oh, okay. Yeah. Procrastination is productivity disguised. No, perfectionism is procrastination disguised as productivity. So it's like, I would start doing this, but I just don't have the right preamp. Son, there is a preamp built into your interface. I don't want to hear it. I started making a full-time living with a $200 mic and a used $300 interface with a laptop. I've been doing this for 7 years now and professionally for the last several. And I just got my first external preamp because it came with a microphone that I bought. I had been using my interface the whole time. So it's like, no excuses, guys, is kind of my thing. So let's jump in and start, and let's let the gear be the icing on the cake rather than the main ingredients we need to even bake a cake. Because I'm looking at you and you got flour, you got eggs, you got everything you need. You're just like, oh, I'm not going to start until I get the sprinkles. No, sprinkles are for later. Just start.
Or they're like, I'm not going to start until it's all organic.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, I think it's all about starting where you are, and just, a lot of people do this though to protect themselves, because really it boils down to fear. They're afraid to start, so they let things like perfectionism or gear, they hide behind that.
Yeah. Well, here's one thing to keep in mind for anyone who's thinking that in order to be great, first you have to be good.
Exactly.
You know where I'm going. And then in order to be good, before you're good, you have to be bad. Mm-hmm. And then before you're bad, you have to start.
Exactly. I love
that's how it goes.
A little ladder right there.
So yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a ladder. And I agree with you. I see that a lot. I feel like, I call it like the when I scenario. I had friends back in New York back in the day who were always like, well, when I do this or like, once this happens, basically they always had these preconceived notions of, I'm not going to do this until this happens.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'll do that when I have
exactly.
When
exactly.
I have time,
Yep. And the reality is they never did anything. Right. They never did anything, because they kept putting this thing off. And you're right, it was based on fear. Well, I'm not going to go get that gig. I'm not going to go, to the local, bar and get a gig until I finish my record. Well, why don't you get the gig? Start seeing how your songs go over live. Well, I don't want to waste my time. I'm not going to get that gig. I'm not going to even start approaching venues until my record's done. Well, that's kind of a backwards approach, because you should be playing those songs in front of people to see how they react to them before you go in and do your record. Or maybe you do your songs live a number of times and something happens and it just changes the direction. I mean, songs live and breathe, right? So, you have to just go out and do things. The ready, what is it? Ready, fire, aim.
Fire, aim. Let me tell you something. I was Mrs. When I for most of my 20s, the queen of when I's. I got a couple good ones. Are you ready? Oh, I mean, I have Logic, but I only have stock sounds, so I can't make good sounding music. So when I get better library, when I can afford to get a better sample library, then I'll start producing more. Bogus. Okay. I did not release anything through a digital distribution. I didn't even make a record until I was 30, because when I have the money to go into the big studio, I'll make a record. Well, guess what? That money didn't come in. So now it's like a lot of people are very, they always ask me like, how are you? You're so quick to action. And you know me, Michael. How often are we talking about something? I'm like, oh, I'm going to do that. And it is done in like the next 2 hours, because I almost like my ready, fire, aim came as a direct result of me remembering the when I days and knowing how capable I am of just procrastinating out of fear or, just no more when I's. I just ready, fire, aim. And now when I get something, I just move on it, because I'm not going to let that happen ever again.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that.
I love to encourage people to the same action, because I love when we're having that conversation and somebody's shaking their or nodding their head like, yes, that's me. I'm stuck. I'm like, you got to allow yourself to just be imperfect. You don't have writer's block. You have, I'm afraid I'm going to write a bad song block. And you know what? It's okay. You're going to produce, when you first start producing, you're going to make so much bad stuff. That's okay. It's part of it. And that's like you were saying, you got to be good. You got to be bad before you can be good. But if you don't even start, you'll never be great, because you're missing all the steps in the ladder, in between, because you won't even start. Yeah.
And what's nice about, especially nowadays, I'm a fan of the online courses, as obviously I have one, you have one, but I also take a lot of other ones, and I consume more courses and programs now. I think I've taken I've gone through more education probably in the last 3 years than I probably really did from the time I was in first grade, all the way till I, graduated and left school. Right. I really feel that way. Yeah. But the thing that's so nice about the where we're at now is, someone can take Kris's program and you can go through that bad phase really quickly. It's just true. Now, when I was starting recording back in the mid 90s, I started on a 4-track. I did it for years on a 4-track. I had no one teaching me, no way really to learn, 4 tracks and cassettes. A couple of years later, was it probably 5 years later, I bought a digital 8-track. Cost like $2,000 at the time, and then I figured out how to record on that. All that stuff sounded like crap, because I had no idea what I was doing. There was no way to really go out there and learn. The only way to go learn was to go to a recording school, and you had to graduate high school before you go to a recording school, right? And then those recording schools were not cheap, tens of thousands of dollars, and then you had to move to a different state and get an apartment and all the other stuff that had to be figured out to make that work. Now you can sign up for a program, and literally in 2 weeks, you can go through the entire program and you can go through your bad phase. And that's what I love about absorbing a lot of the online programs of the things that I'm interested in, is that you can go through that bad phase very quickly. Previously,
because getting to learn from other people's mistakes too, and not just being left to, when I say you're going to create bad songs, not half as many as you'd create by yourself. If you're in a program and you're following, it's a lot of that kind of work has been done for you, because the person teaching you is nope, that's where I went wrong for the first 6 months. Yeah. Let me shorten that for you by teaching you in this module how to avoid that thing. So you're actually, like you're saying, fast tracking, getting through the bad part by doing, something like a course that's so streamlined.
Yeah, and time is the one thing that we really don't get back. So that's why I love the online world, and I'm always looking for things that I can learn. Again, things that interest me that I want to learn, but to be able to learn them so quickly. I mean, so quickly. It's really quite fascinating. And I know not a lot of people know this about me. I'm going to talk about something interesting, but I got into beekeeping. And yeah, some people know I posted a couple things on social media over the years about beekeeping, but I got into beekeeping, for honey and stuff like that. And I didn't just guess. And first off, I'm actually highly allergic to bee stings. But I didn't just guess. I actually went through a bunch of programs. I learned everything about beekeeping, and gosh, how long? Maybe 3 years or something like that. I've only been stung 3 times. And I mean, like, not that you get stung a lot, but I mean, I think that's a testament to what I learned. And 2 of the times was at the two stings were at the same time. One of my very first times out there, because I did something that was terribly wrong, and I never did it again. It was just a mistake that I made, in whatever, it doesn't matter. But learning, it's just speeding up that process, taking a program and watching a course on beekeeping, as dumb as it might sound to some people, how to collect honey and all that stuff. I think it's fascinating. I think bees are fascinating, but just to speed up that process, speed up the years of process and the amount of bee stings that it would take to learn this from a professional. I just really can't say enough about jumping into that. And that's not really an advertisement for signing up for our courses. I'm just stating why I'm a fan of it, and why what we have now with technology allows us really to fast track any process and go from starting to take action and quickly burn through that bad phase, because we want to get through that bad phase as quickly as we can to start getting into the good phase. And you're going to hang in that good phase for a long time. That's the good phase is it's a big phase. There's a lot to that, right? And then eventually you get to the end of that good phase and you start getting great. And, right. And you can definitely speed up the process. So this has been awesome. I loved, I always love talking to you. It's always inspiring. I always love talking with other like-minded musicians who've been able to, on their own, implement various, mindsets, and actions along with their skill set to, have success however they define it, but to have success and make a full-time living as a musician. And, one of the things that I feel like I'm called to do is show and help inspire other musicians that this is possible. It's not some dream. People are always growing up taught that, if you're going to be a musician, you're going to starve. And that's just not true. It's just not true.
Yeah. And, you know what? Can I say something really quick before we hop off? It reminded me of something I was going to say earlier and I forgot. We were talking about how, oh God, I don't remember. I remember what I'm going to say, but not how we got there. But I just wanted to say, when I made the decision that I was like, you know what, I'm ready to go full time with my music. I don't know what that means yet. And I wasn't recording at that time. My songwriting wasn't super strong at that time. I just knew it was something that I really wanted. And I was more of a hobbyist than I like to admit. I was wanting to be a professional, and I planted the seed. And then I thought, okay, I set the intention first, right? And then, how they say when you're ready, the books will start falling off the shelves, or the teacher will appear. And as soon as I set that intention, I remember I was on a long drive going to pick up a car from Oregon. It was a 20-hour drive from Oregon to California. I had had a terrible experience at my bartending job where somebody actually kind of attacked me, like threw glassware at me. It was awful. And I was like, I'm out of here. I don't want to be in the bar business. I want to do music full time. What does that look like? And this book fell into my lap, and it was called The Slight Edge. And it was the first.
Oh, yes. I love that book.
I
love it.
And it was probably the first, at least in a long time, because, I had stumbled upon self-help or self-development books in the past, I'm sure. But this one's the one that sticks out as like the first, like the catalyst, because I absorbed that book like nobody's business. And one of the things he talked about was like, forget the to-do list. What have you done today? Start writing a list of things you've done. Have a master to-do list or something, like these are all the things I could be doing. But every day at the end of the day, I want you to write down what you've done. So I made a point. I made it my, like I started treating music like a job before it was a job. So I realized I had this crazy schedule of sleeping in till 12 or 1 as a bartender, and that wasn't serving me if I wanted to get better. And I knew that the next step was for me. My craft was not there. I was not a strong enough singer. I was not a strong enough songwriter. So I would wake up and I had this schedule that I made that was like, okay, I'm going to do vocal lessons from this point to this point. I'm going to work on studying songwriting. I'm going to work on studying the business. And I made myself a calendar, 2 o'clock this, 3 o'clock this, as though I was at a job. I clocked in and out. And I even fit yoga and meditation into that, learning this new loop pedal that I had. But it was like, I'm going to show up every day like music is paying me and treat it like a full-time job. And that's when things started to change for me. And it's all because I set the intention first, because I was clueless. I didn't know where to start. The book fell in my lap. It's funny. Side note on that book. The reason that book fell into my lap is because someone was trying to get me to join a network marketing pyramid kind of company. And that was the book that came with the package of, welcome to this company. And I looked at the company and I went, this product is not for me, but this book is gold. And I'm going to apply this book to my music. And that's where everything it just changed. I'm not going to say like the next day I was making money with my music, but within a couple months, I started doing some local gigs at like some local pubs. And then, from there, it just grew and grew and grew. And I just wanted to share that because I think that's a mindset right there is like, stop asking music to make money for you when you're not ready to treat it like a job. Treat it like a job.
Yeah, I love that. Oh, you hit on so many good points. Well, first off, I had no idea that you read the Slight Edge. I read that probably about 2.5 years ago and loved it. Loved that book.
There's an updated version of it that I'm actually, I'm like, I'm just going to read it again, because there's an updated version. So.
But the last thing you just said about treating your music like a business, the truth is, if you treat your music like a business, it will pay you like a business owner. But if you treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, I always love to end here with my Real Musicians Don't Starve manifesto. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through it real quick. And that is, real musicians are business owners, and our business is music. A business is simply an organization where value is provided in order to make a profit. And unlike starving musicians who operate with a mindset of scarcity and fear, as success-driven musicians, we operate with a mindset of abundance, confidence, and service. We are doers, we are dreamers, we are creators, and we are achievers. We know that our true value is determined by how many people we serve and how well we serve them, because our truth is, real musicians don't starve.
Yes, I love that.
Awesome. Well, Kris, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And you shared a lot of awesome and inspiring information. I always love talking to you. And I definitely would love to have you back sometime.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast.
Awesome. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next episode.